Chapter 39, Linda 2.0. The purpose of life is a life of purpose. Robert Burns. The greatest moments of our lives are when our mind or body is stretched to its limit in a voluntary pursuit or in something both difficult and worthwhile. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. In the introduction of this book, I mentioned I had difficulty writing this because it was miles outside of my comfort zone. I am an introvert who is carefully releasing my vulnerability to all of you. I used to think, I'll look like a wax statue in the Hall of Failure right alongside my book, a book that's going to get tons of criticism. But I don't think so anymore. Now I just tell myself, what the heck? It's a risk, but I'm going to take it anyway. It's not that I have suddenly become fearless, but I have learned to refuse to let my fear keep me from stepping into the unknown. Of course, the unknown is usually scary. Remember, your mind is a creature of habit and operates based on fear. It continually scans your environment, looking for things to be afraid of, and it does this to keep you safe. In reality, though, giving in to fear doesn't make you strong and safe. It's just the opposite. Not taking any risks makes you weaker. I call risk-taking hormesis for the mind. If you can lose the fear of failure or criticism, you will start seeing enormous opportunities appear before you. They did for me. Fear hijacks not only your creativity, but also your cells, according to Dr. Bruce Lipton. Bruce Lipton is an American cell biologist in epigenetics, the study of how the environment affects our genes, and a former researcher at Stanford University's School of Medicine. He's also the author of the book, The Biology of Belief. Dr. Lipton is best known for promoting the idea that environmental factors can influence gene expression. This means that humans have a far more significant impact on their health than genetic research previously determined. You can't just blame genes for this or that. As he experimented on stem cells and found that it divided every 10 or 12 hours, after a week, he had 50,000 cells. Every individual cell was genetically identical since they all came from the same parent stem cell. Then he created 3 slightly different culture media by changing some of the components. A culture medium is a liquid or gelatinous substance containing nutrients in which microorganisms, cells, or tissues are cultivated for scientific purposes. In fact, he created 3 different synthetic versions of blood. He put these 3 different environments in 3 different dishes. Each dish had portions from the genetically identical cells already in them. As a result, in one of the dishes, the cells became bone cells. In another, the cells became fat cells. In the third dish, muscle cells. Now he was left with a very profound question. What controls the cell's fate? Genes did not control the fate of the cells. The environment did. He concluded that as we change the composition, the synthetic version of blood, we also change the designation of our cells. To quote Nobel Prize winner Elizabeth Blackburn, genes load the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. If I understand it right, just because you have, for example, inherited cancer genes, it's worthwhile to do everything you can with your environment to counteract that, like eating incredibly healthy food, for example. What changes the composition of our blood? Our brain does. What the brain and mind perceive, the brain reacts to it by breaking it down into chemical compounds and electrical signals. When you worry, or feel anxious and uncertain about the future, that is, in fact, fear. Your brain's response to those worries is a release of stress hormones and inflammatory agents, putting you into fight or flight mode. a state of self-protection. Growth is also halted. In contrast, when you perceive happiness and joy, your brain translates that into a response that releases dopamine, a pleasure chemical. Dopamine also enhances growth. You can retrain your brain to feel joyful again. How? With the type of thoughts you consciously make. It sounds obvious, but positive thoughts make you happy, while negative thoughts make you unhappy. Comments about yourself like, "I'm too fat," are negative thoughts that make you feel like a loser or unworthy of anyone's time or attention. And anyone includes you. "I am worried about" is another type of negative thought that makes you feel anxious or depressed. Often, we are so preoccupied with the status quo that we forget we have the power to become the person we want to be. Habits. Remember what I told you previously? Be in the constant pursuit of imagining being the best version of yourself and create habits that support this accordingly. Most importantly, treat yourself like someone you love. I think about this quite often because, as you know, I was anxious and worried nearly all the time before my stroke, and I certainly don't want to fall into that mindset again. For instance, I changed my environment by cutting out the crabs, people that bring negativity. I also decided that I don't want anyone in the cheap seats, again, crabs, who seem to think they have the right to hijack my life choices. My dear friend and painting teacher, Lizelot, suggested, be like Teflon to people that hurt you with their words. Teflon is a coating applied to the surface of cooking pans to make it non-stick. So, to follow up on some very sensible advice, don't let anyone's words get stuck in your mind or your consciousness. I have made must-do habits to eat healthy foods, practice hormesis, and encourage my parasympathetic nervous system to give it a chance to recover a little more every day. I also remind myself to get outside of my cozy comfort zone as often as possible. We can't grow or learn from the sheltered position of our comfort zone, remember? Some people say, adversity is the best teacher, and it certainly was for me. I had worked myself silly and was continually striving for success as seen through the eyes of the world. Money, status, and all of those things that society tells us are important are not. I felt as if my soul was gasping for oxygen. Instead of feeling satisfied with my life, I had a sensation of unresolvedness. No matter how desperately I wanted to feel successful, accomplished, and valued by the outside world, my inner perception was unresolved and restless. Basically, I was looking for self-fulfillment anywhere. I realized now that I had to hit rock bottom before things could get better. Then I went on a self-examination tour. I took a good look at myself. I saw a sleepless workaholic that put away too much effort into extrinsic values outside of myself. I didn't like what I saw. Following this realization, I decided that things had to change. I read and listened to hundreds of books, created a toolbox from what I learned, and immediately put this theory into practice in the form of trial and error habits. In this process, my entire value system shifted from extrinsic to intrinsic, operating from a position of internal reflection. That shift in perception means that I now consider the two strokes I've encountered to be adversity training that help me build stronger adversity muscles. It also helped me to regard most, if not all, of my challenges this way. Stoicism has been a big inspiration for this dramatic shift in mindset. I am stronger and tougher than I have ever been. Instead of dwelling on why is this happening to me, I can calmly, most of the time, approach things from a more considered approach. Approach things from a more considered position, such as, awesome challenge. How can I play my best cards here? Then I play them. And the more I do that, the easier it gets. It becomes a habit. One of my goals in writing this book is to give hope to stroke survivors. If you are a stroke survivor and have lost hope, and you are somewhat depressed because of it, I'm talking to you now. Apologies again if I appear too blunt. Remember those swimming rats? They got their energy through hope. If you don't gain a sense of hope or inspiration from my book, that's fine. But if you follow the energy advice I gave you, you are at least going to have enough energy to swim. I want you to take charge of your life. Even if you get help, in the end, you are the only one who can do the work. I'm sorry to say it, but nobody is coming to save you or make you happy. That's why I want you to come out of the poopy pants mentality, like I had in the first chapter of the book, and scratch out the word fragile written on the box you are in. Write anti-fragile on your box instead. Step out of the back seat of your car and get into the front seat behind the wheel. You need to be able to feel powerful and embrace your acceptance of the bad circumstances that have happened to you, whether you like it or not. Look at your story and flip the pain you have endured upside down. Turn that pain into the fuel that ignites your positive power. That's what I managed to do, and I'm certainly not superhuman. Not at all. I was scared a lot of the time. Yet I managed to not pack it in and run away from facing those difficulties. Cut out your excuses like, I can't do that, or I'm too fragile, I had a stroke. Stop acting pre-dead when you still have a lot of life left to live. Don't give up and become a stroke statistic, for heaven's sake. Create the right habits, food, exercise, energy management, hormesis, and use repetition again and again until you become who you want to be. You need to become your habits. It is only you who can do it. Take charge and prove those naysayers wrong. If you get stuck and aren't making progress in your rehab, you might need to step back a bit and do something like pre-crawling exercises, just like a baby. I believe that it's the only way to move forward again. That reminds me of Jim Quick, the CEO and founder of Quick Learning, and a leader in accelerated learning with online students of every age and vocation in over 150 countries. Quick is a world expert in speed reading, memory improvement, and optimal brain performance. I learned to speed read because of him. Yes, I hacked my reading too. He was giving an interview with Mindvalley and told the following story. Jim spent a lot of time at his grandparents' house as a young boy, and they didn't have any toys for him to play with. The only thing available was an old typewriter. He became super fast at typing, tapping away at the keys with one finger from each hand. When he was old enough to go to middle school, they introduced typing classes. Of course, Jim was at the top of the class when he typed with 2 fingers. He proudly saw his name written on the blackboard as a student who was the fastest typist in the class, but not for long. The teacher taught all the students how to type with 10 fingers. He tried, but it felt awkward. His words per minute score dropped. Jim continued to type with 2 fingers, while the rest of his classmates increased their speed, typing with 10 fingers. Eventually, he was in the bottom 10% of the class. When he finally began to type with 10 fingers, to his despair, he became slower than ever, at first. But he continued to practice and soon caught up. Eventually, he was typing at the same speed as the other students. What can we learn from this? Sometimes, you have to step back and start over to properly learn something. If you are stuck in your rehabilitation, I know most of you will be at some stage, go 2 steps back and work on your core stability. After that, you need to learn how to stabilize your shoulders and hips by holding them in a static position. Next, do the neuromotor pre-crawling exercises. Then we'll see how far you can get. I've been doing this for 9 months now. I have lost about 50% of my spasticity, and I can feel my arm and hand more. I'm starting to move my fingers again too. If any doctors or therapists happen to pick up this book, I want to say to you, be careful not to shatter the hope for stroke survivors. I still don't understand why doctors and therapists set limits of 6 months instead of giving survivors realistic hope, but I'm no longer angry with them. They have their own challenges with administration, paperwork, and the time they are allotted to spend with each patient. However, I do think that doctors need to practice a more holistic approach in their treatment of patients, one that addresses lifestyle, habits, exercise, and diet. Our current cultural paradigm dictates that we ignore health until disease develops. Then we receive medication to treat the symptoms of a disease instead of addressing the root of the problem, why the disease appeared in the first place. I think that you can postpone diseases by creating habits of hormesis, sleep, food, and mind training. I wouldn't trade the sharply focused and clear mind that I got from biohacking my brain for anything. Besides, I think that a lot of doctors have a limited belief in the brain's adaptability. That makes me think of a funny story I read in The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. In this book, Hendrick tells a true story about the events unfolding in the 19th century. Just as a steam train begins to emerge and catch the public's interest, several prominent scientists suggested that the train speed needed to be limited to 30 miles per hour. The reason? They were convinced that people would explode if they traveled above that speed. It's hard to imagine that anyone could believe that, and fortunately, several people stepped in to prove the expert scientists wrong. Remember, these scientists were the hotshots of the time. I need you to be one of the people that steps onto the steam train to prove them, doctors, wrong, like I did. That's why, together with Arjun, we created Brain.Rehab. It is my ikigai. My passion for this cause is bottomless. I plan to be working for Brain.Rehab for the rest of my life because I genuinely enjoy what I'm doing. I have fallen in love with the process, not the goal. That includes endless refinements, continuous improvements, and cutting-edge research that encourages us to build the best online portal for post-clinic brain-injured patients. I finally found my fulfillment, how to matter in this life, through helping others. Earlier in this book, I told you that we had gotten investors for Brain.Rehab. At first, we were enormously happy that we would have a substantial amount of money to jumpstart Brain.Rehab, but when the time came to sign the agreement, they wanted almost 70% of our company. They wanted control so they could sell the company later. Of course, we said no to that. We're not selling our ikigai. We took a deep breath and moved forward. Now we're doing it on our own, on a small budget. If I look back at my life before my stroke, I was lost on the ladder of success, lost in the need to behave in an acceptable way for fear of falling off. From an early age, we're taught to believe that we are meant to climb this ladder if we wish to be perceived as winners. We are also frequently exposed to commercial marketing that makes us believe that we are not enough unless we have that new car, expensive piece of furniture, or latest skin cream. It's all part of the "I'll be happy when" lifestyle. I used to tell myself, I'll be happy when I sell my company in 5 years. Then I'll go on vacation, be more relaxed, and enjoy having the time to be a better mother. I was insane. That kind of happiness requires you to go at rocket speed all the time. It became evident that it was too much for me about 3 years ago when I had my stroke. I know now that happiness is achieved with a different formula altogether. The happiness formula can be a quiet moment, some time for reflection, a conversation with people you care about, or doing work that matters and is important to you. Happiness comes from inside. It doesn't come by chance. It comes by choice. That's what my adversity taught me. No illness is fun, and no one should feel compelled to be grateful for suffering. But conversely, I have also learned that those who have suffered often live fuller lives because they understand the meaning of life. From my near-death experience, I truly understand how precious life is, and that it can be taken away at any time. It's a sort of gift that many healthy people will never understand. Yes, I am thankful that I had my stroke so I could learn this. Did she just say that she's happy she had a stroke? She must be out of her mind. I can hear some of you saying those things, but that's fine too. Maybe you're right, and I am crazy, but I never would have gotten this far in my rehabilitation if I was still worried about being normal. My non-conformity made me who I am and put me where I am right now. Do you see me as rather well-adjusted? Well-adjusted to what? A sick society? Maybe my weirdness is my greatest asset because real sanity rests in authenticity. If you think and live outside the mainstream, don't apologize for your eccentricity. Be a nonconformist and embrace it. Remember, when you are out there biohacking your brain, learning, sweating, exercising, practicing hormesis, meditating, practicing your speech, and being anti-fragile as much as possible, I want to say just one thing to you. You are not alone, fellow rebel.